I'm Tony Weinbender, and I started the fest, and 23 years later, still love working on it.
I tried to choke up, it's a lovely thing. I tried to cider and some whiskey. I had four dead inside of me. Just
Great.
take
So I have a few questions for you. Um, some relating to the past, some relating to like the present, and like some like for future endeavors.
And one
Um,
is, why are you so punk? But the only thing you have is a knocked over chair and a dead wren.
yeah, it's the most punk, I would say.
But it's like not having tattoos is like punk, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. So what was like your first connection to music, like or like the music industry?
Hmm. Industry, let's go with that one because
Yeah.
connected to music and why I started listening to punk is like a longer tale. First time I think like as far as booking stuff goes, we were doing shows just DIY as fuck, and nobody gave us a blueprint on how to do it. It was out of
Yeah.
sheer desperation living in a small Virginia town that that was the only way we could play with except for the other five bands in our town. And we all were very loved playing together, but it was like eager to see and hear new bands, especially when
Yeah.
you're in your 15, 16, 17, 18. That time period, everything is still real new unless you were like somehow I've been punk since I was 8, it's like cool. Your folks forced that on you. Um, it's we were doing it very DIY. It was like straight up like we were in Book Your Own Fucking Life the first 2 years they did that. I
Mhm.
guess the first 2 years, I don't know. And that's how we found out a lot about stuff. And that's like how like a lot of folks that are still involved with it and some that aren't,
Yeah.
involved, uh, came from those ethics. You had people like Tim Berry telling you, pulling you aside as a young punk and saying like, hey, like this is how you treat people. This is how you take care of the people when you stay in their house. You
Hmm.
know, you don't act like it's a fucking Ramada and spoiled brat, and pay it forward. Them and Hot Water Music and
Yeah.
a lot of the bands we dealt with back then, it was under the presence of like, you came here, we take care of you, we're good hosts. When we come see you, we'd hope the same. And the scene was
Yeah.
really, really like that. And there's, outskirts and people that were taking it a little bit too much industry wise. And,
Yeah.
you once in a while have a band that comes through and you're like, God, they were just a bunch of dicks. All they cared about is being big. And that later changed in the punk scene. It kind of, at least within our kind of scene,
Yeah.
especially Northeast and Southeast, uh, it was a different kind of community. And that's kind of like my introduction to the industry in a sense that it was a collective of sorts, but it was also just a lot of like-minded people that crossed paths and had similar situations coming from small towns, not having like a good support system for being different or being punk, you know, handling racism in a lot of ways, handling racisms within the scene, handling like fucked up sexism shit from older punks and like just like because a decade before that or even 6 years before that time period, when we're talking late 80s early 90s in these small towns, it was like
Yeah.
very very old minded. We were like hard, so that was kind of that. But I mean, then there was like industry stuff, like the first time we booked a punk band from California that we really cared about. I won't say who they are because but it was like sticker shock to us in a sense, like they want like money. Like they just don't trust that we're just going to like put on a show and give them all the door money, you know?
Yeah.
Um, they don't trust that we're going to let them sleep in someone's mom's basement and they're going to probably get an awesome home cooked meal.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was kind of like a bummer industry stuff. When I started being at JMU in Harrisonburg and being really heavily involved with WXJM and like starting up Mac Rock and stuff like that, we just started having to deal with like agents. And that was
Yeah.
kind of like, whoa, this is kind of new. And there was some agents that were really, really awesome and kind of came from that same scene. And then
Yeah.
there was the ones who like interned in New York and just all they learned how to be with assholes. And it's still true to this day. There's new agents, there's old agents that still have that mentality. And then there's like a cusp of agents that I love working with, um, that get it and they're really just looking out for the artists.
Yeah.
So it's industry of all those things. I also, worked Fueled by Ramen. That was a whole different,
Mm.
in its early inception, that was a whole different industry thing that actually hindered me because I came from like that kind of ethics of punk rock, and the label wanted to take like a musical direction turn, and I just like was fucking punk and just
Yeah.
picked, 25 and full of it, and was like, fuck you, you're signing Fall Out Boy, I quit. Which that's why I don't work for a record company. you know I don't know how to make money on it. It's all just
Yeah.
music.
No, that's where I've been at right now. I'm like, it's just like music. Like you gotta enjoy it. Like while
Just
it's
enjoy
here.
it, man. Just enjoy it. It's I think music wise isn't punk. It's the ethics that come from it.
Yeah.
And there's different flavors of punk.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. I agree. When you like first started to curate and create the first fest, what was the biggest roadblock you had as you started to grow the festival as well?
Um, Organizing it wasn't a roadblock because I had that experience with Mac Rock, and it was almost like I modeled the whole multiple venue idea about Mac Rock. I modeled like how we had to do it in Harrisonburg and use like what we had. It doesn't like, earlier we were talking about, the pizza place and stuff. And I was
Yeah.
jazzed because like that's kind of cool. And that's like using it's easy to go rent a paint by numbers venue that's really successful and awesome
Yeah.
and just pay the money. It's also fucking cool to make a cool experience for attendees out of nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and so we took more, Macrock was heavily involved with like showcasing all different genres of music. We try to still do that with Fest, but it's still like in the sense of like what I really enjoy too. Um, and then the whole like Macrock was a very like committee based, and everybody had opinions on it and everybody had roles, and we collectively did it all, as like, mainly out of like just love.
Yeah.
It wasn't like for a school project or anything. When you worked for XJM, it was just like you did it. And that was a good experience too. That was a whole different, I guess, industry thing too. I was very, very lucky that JMU is where I went to school and that they still have a very supportive like arts department of that way, having a true college radio station. Like here at UF, the college radio station is a commercial radio station. So you
Mm.
learn how to work at a commercial radio station. That makes more sense if you want to work in radio.
Yeah.
you know? But having a safe place where a bunch of, you know, outcasts could have control of a radio station was fucking awesome, and doing
Yeah.
DIY shit. And also we had a really good advisor who just kind of like, I can't remember what he taught, but he was on the same hall and stuff. And he would just pop in like twice a year. And he's like, I guess I got to check on y'all kids. You burn it down yet? And that would pretty much be it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So that was kind of cool too. But yeah, just that kind of messed up the ramen thing for me in a lot of ways. But in the end, I wouldn't have started Fest. So we kind of modeled it after that. I also modeled it with after the sense of like I had moved to Gainesville to kind of like kickstart ramen, and it was kind of a dream job in
Yeah.
many ways. I couldn't ask for a better opportunity. It just so happened that, like I said, I was kind of bullheaded about stuff. And
Yeah.
but if that wouldn't happened, I wouldn't have been moving furniture and
Mm.
waiting tables, learning how to wait tables, to
Yeah.
stay alive and pay rent. I wasn't going to give up. And friends were like, you should do Macrock, something like that here. And I was like, I don't want to do a bunch of like panel discussions and workshops and stuff. I just
Hmm.
want to like have fun and have all of our friends. Because I was still, when I lived in Gainesville, all those, when I was ramen, when I wasn't at ramen and still
Yeah.
like was working two jobs, I was still constantly getting hit up by awesome bands that were friends of ours being like,
Yeah.
hey, like Strike Anywhere was one of the first ones. Like they hit me up like I think like the week I moved here, and was
Yeah.
like, hey, and they were really new at the time. The week thing is an exaggeration probably, but the concept of time is irrelevant. Um,
Yeah.
but so it was like basically we just invited we, I kind of did it more of like a collective style in the first year. I brought in a lot of friends and quickly realized that I'm just going to do all of it anyway. But it was
Yeah.
fun to discuss. And it was also fun for a lot of people who hadn't had that experience in doing DIY shows or playing in bands and whatnot, to have some
Mhm.
sort of role and input into it. And it was really awesome. I mean, we there's photos floating around. I have a few, some other friends have a few of like
Yeah.
us screen printing the t-shirts and all sitting around drinking beers and eating shitty food and drinking too many beers
Yeah.
and like, putting together packets and like, like getting everything ready and writing the guidebook together, the first
Yeah.
guidebook was like a little fanzine and stuff. Um, and Fest still is that way. And
Yeah.
that's what's kind of cool about it. We have over 550 volunteers. I love that opportunity to give somebody, be it, a college kid or somebody's kid or an adult who never had that experience either.
Yeah.
We have older folks that, to kind of be immersed in the environment and the panic of it all. And
Yeah.
it's a good community that way. But in the earlier years, yeah, it was a lot. We leaned on bands to be cool and to like have their shit together in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And people shared gear more. It was still a bunch of venues, and it was a lot more like it was a lot less agents back then and just talking direct with buds.
Hmm.
So it was fun. That was a
Awesome.
hurdle. The hurdle was just doing it.
Yeah. 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 Okay. You kind of already like touched on this a little bit, but like, did you have any like really specific goals like for when you like want to
Just
create
to
fest?
just to feel relevant again, man. Honestly, like, I'd moved here for that job and I was I was really down on myself. It was like one of those situations where you drop out of college, and you take this job and it's literally to what you always thought you wanted and then realize that
Yeah.
that's not. I think a lot of people go through that too,
Yeah.
um, and what you choose for work wise can shift constantly through life, and you have to learn how to juggle and how to deal with what makes you happy in the end.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
Fest was really like it helped me a lot. That was the
Um,
goal, not to lose money, which we did the first year
yeah.
and to feel bummed about that. And then we lost like $500, but back then, like, dude, that was rent and like groceries for a month.
Yeah.
So it was like, fuck, you
Yeah.
know.
What do the contracts look like as you kind of like create them for each separate bands? Or are
I
you
don't
just,
create contracts.
yeah.
That's kind of the bummer. More agents means more contracts, which means more people you have to deal with. And sometimes you're dealing with people that I swear I'll never meet this person. I'll never hear their voice. This person could totally be an AI at this point,
Yeah.
and probably is the language, how they talk to you through email. It's
Hmm.
just like, need this ASAP. Not, hey, thanks for booking this band. How was your day? By the way, I'm just trying to remind you that there's this contract due.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just the basic shit. And so contracts vary. It's depends on the agency. More and more and more bands that we deal with are dealing with larger booking agencies. And it sucks because every band that plays Fest gets pretty much the same thing, but they'll still send like these pages of writers that you
Yeah.
just have to painstakingly print, cross out, scan, send back, just a big no, and then write
Yeah.
and circle on the side like this is what every band gets, you know. Um, Also, it's like it's getting more and more tedious about legal shit. Since COVID, like it seems like these contracts have gotten a lot deeper and more legal, and I'm catching things that are kind of like this is not right, and then having
Yeah.
to like be like this kind of screws me if like the world collapses or a hurricane hits, and their
Yeah.
response is always like, "Oh, you just get insurance for that." And it's like, I can't. I live in Florida. Like, they won't insure a music festival.
Yeah.
Bands can get that insurance, I learned, and it's fucking cheap
Hmm.
for bands to get insurance, which I didn't know. I mean, like silly cheap. And it covers like your gear. It covers like apparently it covers like if the tour like you fucking can't tour. It's almost like
Yeah.
gambling against yourself. Um, and that'll probably get abused and it won't be
Yeah.
cheap anymore. But you know, it's just that's a hurdle is going through these things, and that's kind of makes it not enjoyable. And I kind
Hmm.
of have to be like, yeah, this is the work part of it. You
Yeah.
know, it sucks. And luckily, you know, we've been, knock on all the wood, able to like say like we've been doing this for 23 years, and like we're not new to the block right now.
Yeah.
You know, we already succeeded doing a very good plan when COVID happened. And we did it the right way. We did it very ethically. We didn't get greedy like a lot of folks and just say fuck it and try to do it. I mean, we live in a state that the whole state did that. So it's kind of like one of those things. Like when you're talking about contracts and stuff, it's, you know, some people get jazzed and love reading that stuff.
Yeah.
I hate
What does your daily workload look like in the few weeks leading up to Fest?
the few weeks leading up. It's everything's booked. You
Yeah.
know, so now we're just spending the time to inform the bands and or whoever's dealing with the bands or who is not reading the information
Yeah.
sometimes, which is a lot of folks. Sending all that together, you know, we're getting in groups together, we're putting together all the band packets. We usually do a big giant volunteer, like everybody who's volunteered get in one
Yeah.
place, which is really awkward for me to stand on a stage and have to talk for like 40 minutes. I've
Yeah.
gotten a lot better about being direct. It doesn't ramble on as much as it used
Yeah.
to. um, and, you know, just getting everything ready. We have like a lot of people that work Fest work it just the weekend of and the weeks leading up to it. So we have like this year, I think our friend Frederica is coming back. She's volunteered and worked Fest for a long time. She lives in Hamburg, Germany.
Oh,
You know, Curtis Grimstead comes down, who does all of our accounting and books and stuff. He comes down from Richmond. Floyd comes in from like San Francisco, you know, and then the folks that still live in town, we get together. We work on that stuff. It's about a week long, you know, and then it's like all production, you know, weekend up.
yeah.
It's getting everything set up and ready to go. You kind of switch modes into like, I'm not answering questions anymore. We're just
Yeah.
making it awesome for the attendees, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you we told you everything.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
that's a fun part of the weekend too, you know, but also it's amongst us, we've done it for so long, it's almost comical. Like we can make side bets on who's going to ask us
Yeah.
the dumb questions every year. And they're still our buds, but yeah.
Yeah, for
It's just
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're playing this year. You should take charge just to read all the stuff that Randy's been sending,
Yeah.
and we, you know, co-write together and stuff, and you can see. But those are kind of the weeks leading up, you know, and double
Yeah.
checking with all the venues, doing walkthroughs again, meeting like the staff that's going to be working the weekend of is really crucial too. Making
Yeah.
sure they don't have any questions, make it easier on them. A lot of these places that we use don't do shows year round, you know, and then we have the whole Boat Diddley Plaza production that we do all ourselves. All we do
Yeah.
is we get the stage and the power. Everything else we have to build out and do ourselves. We used
Wow.
to do our own like trash and stuff too, and recycling, and it just got too hard. So
Hmm.
now we've learned a lot to like lean on the city a little bit more. I mean, we're paying them um,
Yeah.
for everything, but it's like, you know, it's also learning to trust, you know, it's not
Hmm.
our little like castle. You know, we
Yeah,
can't
for
just have the gates and be like, ye not enter.
sure.
You're not one of us, you
Yeah.
know? Um,
Yeah.
so it's, you know, but we do also deal with like, you know, hiring Gainesville Police Department every year. And we have long talks with them leading up to it too. And like fire and rescue and all this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
this is how we've done it. We've done it forever. You don't need to be coming in here with your tactical gear on. If we have a problem, we will bring this motherfucker to you. You
Yeah.
know, and Fest is beautiful in that way. We don't really have that problem.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
I
great.
think the people that attend, we've curated something that's a great experience, not only like the city, the environment around here, the way Gainesville lays out, you know, our vibes, the bands that play. I think we take time and try to do what we can do within the money budget we have, and the fact that, you know, we overbook and have way too many cool new bands.
Yeah.
Um, it's that vibe, and we've been really lucky. And I think it's
Yeah.
because we don't make it very industry, we don't make it very corporate, but we do important things that are smart,
Yeah.
and you know, that's the one thing I've learned early on, and punk doesn't mean sloppy.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. You can have heart, but if you're slacking and you're hurting the scene in that way, and punk doesn't mean money either.
Mhm.
There should be an industry thing on this. There should be classes on like how to do things the right way with ethics.
Yeah.
The music industry is so corrupt and rotten to the core. I feel like the stuff that we put out there in our scene is like really kind of like it's more hippie than anything else. It's kind of realistically, at least
Yeah.
that's the kind of punk I like.
What is your favorite part about putting on Fest each year, and how do you continue keeping like a community together of punk rockers?
Favorite thing is kind of hard to pin down, but I really enjoy giving a platform to bands, especially new bands. We
Hmm.
don't have to book as many bands as we do, and but like I love that. Like we've had so many bands that we gave them their first big like stage, or platform or whatever to like people from all over. And we've watched them like just grow over the years to the point where like, I mean, like this year, Jeff Rosenstock's like headlining. That's like
Yeah,
crazy because like Jeff used to play like crazy weird DIY bike collectives, that we
yeah.
would allow us to do shows. And like just anything that was weird and crazy, like Bomb Music Industry was down to do. Um,
Hmm.
so it's awesome. It's like kind of that's a for me like seeing all these bands from overseas, smaller bands, and then being able to like see that reaction with the fans as well.
Yeah.
That's one cool thing about Fest is people that come are super nerds about the indie scene in our world,
Yeah.
and very much like in lines, like talking about bands, and talking about like where they're from and how their scene is and things. And there's been also like the fans have done a really good job at like building that community themselves.
Hmm.
Um, and with that, they're like helping each other and helping bands and like getting ideas on how to do things like Fest and where
Yeah.
they live. Like Pooza Fest is a prime example of that. They're very vocal about like how they came to Fest and were like, we're going to do something like this, and I applaud that. That's what it is. Just saying like we can do this and trying.
Yeah.
Um, we've always put our best foot forward to take care of our attendees first.
Yeah.
It's sad to say, but the bands kind of fall second. And we try to make it to where it's a very immersive environment, to where there's not just a giant backstage where all the bands go and sit in
Yeah.
trailers and have fine catering and only stand backstage to watch bands. We want bands to intermingle. We want bands to have the same experience as attendees.
Yeah.
That's why bands don't get special privileges when they play Fest. It's everybody's created the same. Bands have the same wristband as attendees,
Mm.
as volunteers. Like everybody's kind of equal.
Yeah.
Like a VIP package either, and I think that keeps everybody kind of on the same playing field.
Hmm.
Um, and then, like I said, Gainesville's just like maybe in a previous thing, Gainesville's just a really chill town to walk around in.
Yeah.
The venues are really cool and supportive of attendees, mainly because the majority of them don't have like punk shows all year round.
Yeah.
So we've had many of venues that are like, this is a breath of fresh air compared to dealing with the college ding dongs every
Mm.
fucking weekend that we have to,
Yeah. How do you like continue to try and keep Fest rooted to like the DIY and underground scene, even though it's like grown so much over 23 years?
I think that's a great question too. Uh, I think you just have to want it to do it. And
Mm.
it's that simple. It's so easy to like, there's two paths. It's so easy to go just, the route of, a lot of music festivals also like will have outside promotion companies do their
Yeah.
stuff. Or like look how many things are now run by like Live Nation, and Ticketmaster. That's gross that have like those things run by that are supposedly quote unquote punk festivals.
Yeah.
But that's their prerogative, and that's the thing. And most attendees don't pay attention to stuff like that. It's like, when you work in a restaurant and you go eat at a restaurant, all you're thinking about is what's the conditions like behind in
Yeah.
the restaurant, but most people that eat there don't think about that.
Hmm.
Same, it's kind of hard to like do that and just sometimes sit back and enjoy and be like, oh, whatever. Um, but for me, I think having so many bands and dealing with a lot of bands direct uh, keeps me happy,
Yeah.
and that's the end game of it. Like I'm not working for a company. This is a beast that I created, and now,
Yeah.
at times it feels like an albatross, but at most of the time it's the work I love. It's just keeping to your ethics, and sometimes the ethics aren't the like smart business like money making thing, but
Hmm.
it is a smart way to run business in the way we want to run business.
Yeah.
I think the DIY, the way, we talked about earlier, the way I was kind of brought up, and I think a lot of that happens in trial and error. Um, I've had my errors, and learned from them. It's really, like I said, a choice,
Yeah.
of how you want to do it. So just keep harking back on like, you know, the way you want to curate things. And the
Yeah.
lasting impression is not just a music festival, I think, in a lot of ways. I want people to come
Hmm.
here and feel inspired to do, like we talked about, other things in their town, to learn from each other. People organically create their own workshops in a way at Fest.
So do you have any like suggestions for up and coming like promoters slash like show bookers now that
Yeah.
you've been running Fest for so long
Don't
and doing
don't do it.
everything?
Don't do it because you want some industry mogul or make money from it. Do it
Yeah.
because you want to help bands and provide a safe space for people around you. That's really it. And if something, don't let like bands or booking agents muscle you, into like doing guarantees and stuff. You can always do the old Fugazi deal, 80-20 split. 80%
Yeah.
of the door goes to the bands, 20% goes back to like the space to be able to do future shows and pay people that work their butts off, if that's a thing.
Yeah.
Try to involve as many people you can around you. Don't just do it all yourself. Get a little, like you're doing, like a collective, have volunteers, like give perks to people that work,
Mhm.
and get outside advice. When you're young and you're doing this, um, it's so easy, especially now with the internet and everything else, to like just get trapped into booking stuff that you really don't give a shit about. The end game doesn't always have to be you're going to be the next big production company. The end
Yeah.
game should it's very rare that people are still doing it, that care at my
Mhm.
age.
Where do you see the state of the music industry and particularly the live music industry in the future?
I think there's the even after 2020, a lot of music venues shutting down. That we've seen a lot of stuff. At least I think so. I don't book tours or anything, but it seems like there's still plenty of ample places to play, and it seems like there's still DIY efforts to do it too. Um, I think that the bigger artists seems like they're going in a very much more music industry route,
Mhm.
playing bigger arenas and stuff like this. The ticket prices have jumped up so high in like general going to shows. The fees that ticket companies are charging are just like make my eyes just go. I hope that people still go to record stores and flip through records and find cool stuff and talk to the old curmudgeon behind the counter, and then tell you like, no, check this out instead. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool. But there's probably somebody doing something very similar on the internet too. I just
Mhm.
I don't go down that road, you
Yeah.
know. But I do love like having access to that and the young like 13 to 16-year-old kid that I was would have been like enthralled with YouTube.
Yeah.
you know, being able to see live footage of bands. Like we were like doing no shit like tape trades, like VHS
Hmm.
tape trades of like compilations of like clips of bands. And the more times you like burned it off of somebody else, the quality just got shittier
Yeah.
and shittier. But I mean, we would burn those tapes through just to like watch bands that lived in California or like in the Midwest that would never come through Roanoke, Virginia. Uh,
Hmm.
so, now there's YouTube stuff like that. And so that's kind of cool. And I hope that things like that keep going. As far as the live music scene and stuff like that, it's just the biggest thing is it's constantly just going to uptick. The old
Hmm.
$5 show is a dinosaur in a lot of ways. I still
Yeah.
try to do them, when I can. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's rough, man.
How has your like festival adapted to new things happening every year in the music industry? And like what would you say has helped like those kind of like changes in the music industry and like what has been like challenges?
The biggest challenge is me being 49 and coming from the scene that I was in and not
Yeah.
tech savvy. That's been the biggest challenge, like as far as like industry switch. That's been over the years a challenge to where I need to bring in more people that can do things like video motion graphics or build a website, uh,
Hmm.
even like running social media. I don't even personally have social media. So if I learned very quickly that if I tried to like take over the account for a night to like do something, I would muck
Hmm.
it up really bad. The application process has changed dramatically since the beginning.
Yeah.
We used to have, you would download a form or just mail in, like, people would mail in CDs and tapes or records sometimes, letters. Sometimes they put weird shit in there too for fun. And we would have to like, go through the mail bins and like had piles of like
Yeah.
yes and no, maybe, and then narrow that down, then write bands back. It was a longer process. It was a lot of fun though too, because it brought us together as like a crew. Um, like on nights where we would just sit around and have drinks and like listen to
Yeah.
music, talk about music. Now it's more like an onslaught of emails to me, um, bazillion unsolicited, uh,
Yeah.
bazillion like booking agents who don't have any concept of what Fest is like, nor do they, here's a rant, nor do they even ask their bands, hey, do you want to play this festival?
So like what was it kind of like booking before like any technology stuff? Like how like
Well, we
hard was it
always,
or how like
I mean,
different is
for
it from now?
Fest, it's always been some technology. I mean, there was email and stuff like that and like things, but I don't even know if we had a website the first year. I guess
Yeah.
we had to have, maybe. I know we just made like an 8.5 by 11, like, or 11 by 17 or something. We made a black and white flyer, and that was
Mm.
like our only way of like promoting Fest.
Wow. Yeah.
There was no social media. There was no way to blast it out to the masses. It was
Hmm.
like we had flyers made, hoped that bands would take them on tour and put them on their table. Before that, it was, in the 90s, it was crazy. We did it. It was more like you play with bands and then you would set up at your house late night in your mom's place,
Yeah.
eating pizza, and they would have like a binder or like a notebook or something, and everything
Hmm.
was handwritten in there, and it was like Cincinnati, this person's cool, does this, blah blah, and you would sit there and like trade off. It wasn't like I could take my phone and take a picture of it. There was no way
Yeah.
to email me the PDF of it. It was like really direct, and it was helpful in so many ways when you were booking a tour
Hmm.
because you knew like, oh, Jason from Hot Water said this person is good,
Yeah.
or Darren from Less Than Jake said this person is good, or the band that's staying with you did it, and you hope that, and you would notice if you were on a lot of those lists because then you started getting calls,
Yeah.
phone calls with a you know an old answering machine. Traveling was crazy, like
Yeah.
you a lot of times it was like directions. It'd be like, go down here, take a left at the 7-Eleven,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
you had to learn maps. I remember being 16 and having the big giant fold out map, until we got the like
Yeah.
the nicer, could afford the nicer one that was laminated. As far as the other end of like booking for bands, I mean, it was like I said, you just had to be patient with it. And then bands would send you their music most of the time back then, tapes. And then you'd have to like really call them or do handwritten correspondence.
Hmm.
So mailing letters back and forth. And that was
Yeah.
kind of cool too. You really got in the phone conversations too. You got to really know people and you got excited to have them down. I remember the first time um, we did a show at Troutville Town Hall. It was like a little rental space you could do
Hmm.
in Troutville, which was outside of Daleville, outside of Roanoke. So
Yeah.
small thing. Across the street was like a little baseball field. So we could like rent the town hall, do shows in there. And these people would be like, okay, you paid your $100 deposit and your $100 rental fee or whatever it was back then, and we bring a PA in and we'd have bands play. But we had a band from Canada come down. So they had a full kitchen so we could do like a community potluck type
Oh,
thing.
cool.
So everybody got fed, attendees and bands. We charged a cover. It was always never alcohol at the shows or anything. We had a band from Canada who didn't know FYP. It was them from California, and those times were great.
Yeah.
It was like being young and putting those together, and it gave you something to look forward to for weeks. It was a
Yeah.
lot harder back then too because punk wasn't so widely accepted. So like it wasn't like you could walk around high school and tell all your friends because
Yeah.
the bad were the four other people around you that were helping with the show.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like all my questions I have.
Okay, I really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah,
I'm
of course.
back to my old house and do another day's work of painting.